And another element of the social boldness that you mentioned is that business and this propensity to trade with each other leads people then to be willing to overlook a lot of the things that they ordinarily wouldn't overlook, right, in history, like their ethnicity or their race, right, or their religion or their gender. So people in business, right, to the extent that they engage in this propensity to truck and barter, are we more likely to be tolerant and peaceful?
Tolerant, peaceful, and there are real incentives in the market and in business to not discriminate. There are real incentives to include anybody within your trading or productive enterprise as long as they can in turn trade or be productive with you. I'm not saying that answers all questions, will solve all problems in humanity, but there's a critique of market systems out there that they're inherently racist or inherently sexist, and that's simply not true.
Okay. All right, to go from flourishing in general, if we look at business in particular, in the former you mentioned Aristotle a lot, and I know in your methodology and talking about the nature of business you rely on Hume a lot. You're very empirical. What is it that makes business business? Right? So it's one thing to say, here's the ethics that we should be applying here, but we also have to understand the enterprise in its own right. So what makes business a distinctive kind of human enterprise?
I think that the purpose of business is to produce a good or a service for trade.
Okay.
That's what makes it distinctive. Some would argue that perhaps that the purpose of business is to serve a social good. For various reasons, I don't think that that's the purpose of a business. That's purposes of charities. That might be the purpose of certain political mechanisms. But if you look at what business is, it fundamentally involves trading. It involves using money as a method of calculation for making your decisions. To overlook that is to overlook the nature of business.
Okay, to say that the purpose of business is not primarily to produce a social good, what's the contrast then? That the purpose of business primarily is individuals mutually satisfying their individual purposes?
Business allows you to do that, but I can solve my individual purpose. I can be an artist. I don't have to trade. I can make my artworks. I could be a philosopher. Like Socrates didn't trade his thoughts, and he had, a life of his own that satisfied his preferences. I really think to say that you're going into business means that you're accepting a body of rules and goals and obligations that center around this notion that I am going to productively engage with other people on the basis of trade. If I'm not trading, if I'm just giving you something that's a gift, and that's not business. If I'm just taking from somebody, that's theft, and that's not business. Once we engage in this mutual give and take of what's called trade with goods that we have produced without violating property rights or contract rights, then that's business.
Okay, you were also critical of two of the major models that are currently dominant in business ethics discussion, the stakeholder model and then sometimes what's called the stockholder model. And if we here use Milton Friedman as the major representative of the stockholder model, you were critical of the idea that business should be defined in terms of a social responsibility to produce profit. What's wrong with that definition or account in your judgment?
I get this from my business colleagues. No, the purpose is to make a profit. Well, stop. If one is in a financial services industry where the good or service one provides is actually an optimization of money accounts, whether it be through hedge funds, mutual funds, monetary instruments, derivatives, then that's true. But that doesn't mean that it applies to everything. I mean, people get involved in family businesses because they like the business. People start second careers in different businesses just because they've always wanted to operate a tiny theater in a small town. I'm thinking of Berkeley, West Virginia. There's a small theater that people opened up because they just always wanted to do that. Profit's important. Without a profit, you go out of business. as I said before, the money is a method of making your decision procedures, and profit also allows you to get what you want out of life if you get money. So it's very important. I'm not saying it's not, but I don't think it's the purpose of business. It's a yardstick, how well you're doing business.
Okay. Would you put that in the context of a corporation, say, where there's a division of labor between management and the stockholders? Is there any role for saying that the managers have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit for the stockholders? Or is that merely a limited case of business closer to the hedge fund people, for example, you mentioned earlier?
There is a tendency in business ethics to over-corporatize. That everything turns out that if you want to talk business ethics, we have to talk about how either Enron or GM. And if you look at the business census data, at least half of all businesses are smaller than, I think, 500 people.
Okay.
With sizable chunks even in the lower registers. So the reason I don't like talking about fiduciary responsibilities of managers to stockholders isn't because it isn't important, it's because everybody's talking about it. Whereas what I want to talk about is I want to talk about this practice called business. And whether you're a corporation, whether you're a privately held company, whether you're a professional, whether you're operating out of your garage or some multi-billion-dollar complex, this is something that has import to you.